Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for our webinar, excuse me, Oops, Common Email Mistakes. My name is Jill, and I'm the Training and Education Manager here at Vertical Response. And today I'm going to take you through some of the most common email marketing mistakes that people make in their emails, and what you should do to correct the errors that you have possibly sent out. Just a couple things before we get started. First of all, this is one of our shorter webinars, so it's about 30 minutes long. Actually, it's probably about 25 minutes long. And then at the end, there will be time for Q&A. So if you do think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in your GoToWebinar window, and I'll be more than happy to answer as many of those as I can at the end of the webinar. One of the questions that I get at every webinar and demo that we do is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, I am recording this webinar. So you'll be able to access this information on our help site next week. I usually put up the recorded versions about a week after the webinar has occurred. I'll also have the slides up there as well if you just want to take a look at the slides. And that will be on our help site. So if you go to help.verticalresponse.com and then click on webinars, you'll be able to access them there. So let's go ahead and get started with the webinar. So first of all, this is what we're going to go through today. And initially, I'm going to go through some of the basics of what you should do once you realize that something has gone out that shouldn't. And then I have some specific information about subject lines, links, typos, content, and how you can avoid this in the future. And I do have a lot of examples. The people who send me emails on a regular basis were kind enough to make some mistakes lately. So I have some error examples for you as well, so you can take a look at that. So first of all, the first thing you need to do if you send out an email and then you realize that something isn't correct in it is that you need to just take a breath and not panic. Everyone makes a mistake, and if you haven't yet sent out an email that has some kind of an error in it, it will happen. So it is good that you're here and you can institute a plan of action in case or when this happens in the future. We even do it. We have a big QA process here, and we still sometimes have errors go out. We sent a newsletter for our lounge last week, and we spelled vertical response wrong. So there you go. It happens to everyone. So what we're going to do first is go through and assess what the impact of the error in the email was, and then how to respond to that. So first of all, you need to take a look at how many people were impacted by the error in your email. Did you mail to your full mailing list? Did you mail to a segment of your mailing list? And what is the open and click-through rate on the email that you sent out that had the mistake in it? So did you have an error on a link? So when somebody clicked on a link, they went to the wrong page. How many people actually clicked on the link? So this is what you want to take a look at to find out who's actually been impacted by the error in your email. Then you want to take a look at how big was the mistake. Is it a typo? Did you misspell your company name like we did? Was there a pricing error? Was it supposed to be 15% off and your email says 50% off? That's a pretty big error right there in sale. So you want to see how big the mistake is and essentially how angry your customers or recipients of your email will be if they get the email and the information in it isn't what they think it's supposed to be. And then you need to think, how is this going to impact your business or organization? Are you going to be embarrassed because you don't know how to spell your company name like we did? Or you didn't use spell check when you created your email? Or is this something that's going to cause a loss to your business? So you need to assess quite a few things here. This is why you have to take a deep breath and be calm while you take a look at what's going on. And then once you figure out how many people have been impacted, is this the sort of thing that you need to send an email follow-up for? And then see how it's going to impact your business. Now, one of the things about sending out a follow-up email, if you've had a mistake in your original email, is that if you send another email right away, some of your recipients will be annoyed that you're mailing to them again, even if it was for a mistake. And so you could drive people to unsubscribe. So it's important to know that if you've the mistake isn't a big one, you probably don't want to send out a follow-up email because you risk alienating people on your mailing list because you have a typo in your email. Typos happen. Generally speaking, the thing that you want to keep in mind if you're going to decide if you're actually going to send out a follow-up email to your email, if the mistake that you made in the email is something minor in how it displayed, like maybe part of your template didn't display but your offer was fine, if there was a spelling error, something minor like that, don't send a follow-up email because, again, you could drive unsubscribes. Instead, if you send out a monthly newsletter, for example, that's something that you could point out in the next month's newsletter that, yeah, you actually do know how to spell. Or whatever you want to do. The one thing about spelling errors is people are very, very busy, but if you misspell something in an email, they're more than happy to tell you that you didn't spell something correctly. So you might get a little bit of feedback on a typo in your email if it's just a misspelling of something, but you don't want to drive people to unsubscribe from your list. So it's kind of a balance of what you're going to do, but generally speaking, if it's something minor, if it isn't going to impact your business, and if it's really just a spelling error, don't send a follow-up. If you have the wrong offer in your email, so like my example was 15% off, but the email said 50% off, if you sent the email to the wrong segment of your mailing list, so maybe you sent out an email about horses and it was supposed to go to people who like puppies, whatever. You sent your email to people who like Chardonnay, but your email was about Merlot, whatever it is. In your email, you sent the wrong information to the wrong segment. If your email is image heavy and your images were broken in the email and so they didn't render, if your business is going to lose out because of the information that either didn't show up in the email or was incorrect in the email, then you should send a follow-up email so that people know the correct information. If you're having some kind of an event and you have the wrong date in the email, then you definitely want to send a follow-up because otherwise people will show up at the wrong day or wrong time and then they'll be really angry. So once you assess first if you're going to send a follow-up and then how many people were impacted, these are some things to keep in mind. So first of all, if you are sending a follow-up email, you want to try to send it out fairly quickly. This way you might be able to catch people before they've even seen the first email, in which case you'll have minimal impact on making people angry over seeing the wrong information in your email. And it could actually be something helpful. They'll say, oh, wow, that's great. They caught me before I even saw it. You want to be clear in your follow-up email why you're sending an email, especially if you don't mail on a daily basis and you send another email out the next day, for example. So make sure your subject line is clear or your pre-header or both. That they say something like correction or oops or we apologize, something like that so that your recipients know that this is a specific one-off email that they're getting and it has to do with something that you had sent previously. Apologize, let them know what the error was. If it's a technical thing or if it's slip of the finger on your keyboard and you type the wrong thing, you can let them know what happened and then just make sure they understand it was just an error. If there's something in the email that you had, like a product or a service that you mentioned in the email that was on sale or you were giving a discount, and that isn't the accurate information, have some kind of backup if that's possible. Maybe give them, in my example, I'll probably use this for the rest of the webinar, the 15% off versus 50% off. Maybe you can bump up the percent off to 20% as an apology to your recipients. Something that might give them some value if what you promised in the first email is something that you can't give them. Also, when you send out your email, you want to stay on brand. Humor is good, and there are some pretty funny emails I've seen in the past of errors that people have sent out, and then they send out some funny apology emails. You just want to make sure you stay on brand and in the tone that your recipients would understand. So don't rap out an apology to your recipients if they have no idea what rap music is. So just try to stay in something that your recipients will understand. Also, if you're on social media, which hopefully everybody is, we talk about this a lot, you might want to consider acknowledging what happened on social media. So maybe put it on your Facebook page, say, oops, if you received our email, there was a typo. It should be this, blah, blah, blah. Or on Twitter, which can help keep your company looking transparent over what has happened and you're not trying to hide anything. And also, if you're a company that has a customer support department, that can help alleviate issues that might come through them if they get calls from people who are saying, I don't understand this email. So putting information on social media is also a great way for you to be able to address what might have happened. So now we're going to go into some specific things that could go wrong in your email and some of the things you can do to correct those. So having an issue with your subject line could impact your open rate because the from label and subject line is what drives your recipients to open the email. If there's something wrong with the subject line, it could cause your open rates to go down. One of the things that I have here says never use a filler in the subject line, like to be determined or test or anything like that. When you're creating your subject line, create the subject line you want to use when you're setting up your email. So many times people forget to go back and put in the real subject line, and I have an example when this didn't happen. Again, in your follow-up emails, be sure in your subject line to use something like correction, oops, or we apologize, so your recipients know that you haven't upped your mailing frequency or you're trying to annoy them. You're just trying to correct something from the past. Also, you might want to consider using your pre-header area as part of the correction or in conjunction with your subject line as well. And I have an example of this too for you to take a look at. So this is our first oops here. This company, it's kind of hard to see. I should have pointed this out. Up here in the top left, the subject line is blank. So they forgot to put the subject line in altogether. Now, this is an interesting thing because not having a subject line will probably impact the open rate on this email. It was probably considerably lower than their normal open rate would be because nobody knew what this email was about. Some people might have recognized the brand and just opened the email automatically, but because there's no subject line, their open rate, I'm sure, was much lower than it normally was. Now, this company did not send out a follow-up, but I believe the reason that they don't mail through us, so I don't know for sure why they did this, or didn't. But my assumption is that they had a mail plan because this was in the week of Thanksgiving, so leading up to Black Friday and a big shopping weekend. They already had a mail plan for that week that included sending out additional emails. So if they sent out a correction email for this one, that would have impacted their mail plan that they already had in place. So they mailed 3 more times in this week, which is a lot, but it is a busy week that was coming up. So by adding another email into their mailing plan, that could have caused more issues than sending out a correction for this one email. Now, if this was the only email they were sending out in the month, then for sure there should have been a follow-up. But because they had a series of emails already planned, there really wasn't a need to send out a follow-up for this. So that's something else to keep in mind if you're going to be sending out a follow-up email is how much more are you planning on mailing as part of your normal mailing plan if you do have an error in an email. So this is one of the things I also mentioned that you want to try to avoid doing as well. This is where the subject line says testing. So again, when you're creating your email, you want to make sure that the subject line that you're putting in there is the real one. Otherwise, you could end up sending out an email like this. But what I really like about this company is that in their next newsletter that they sent out, they addressed the problem that they had. And they did it in a funny but professional way. And she said, I accidentally hit the send button before I was finished. If you hit the delete button, I'm not surprised, but in case you missed the news, here are some more information. And so she had a link to the last newsletter and then some links to some other resources that she wanted to have other people take a look at. So this is a really nice way to handle an error with the subject line as well, is just to make note of it in a future newsletter. And then this is an email that they had sent out with the wrong information. So the subject line says correction, so I knew that this was a correction to an email they had sent before. And this is their pre-header up here. So when I looked in my inbox, I saw correction, get $20 dining check. Oops, we made a mistake on our previous email. So I saw this information before I even opened the email. So the pre-header did a great job of giving me information about what the email was about and what had gone wrong in the last one. Even before I had opened the email, I knew what information I was going to get from this. So using the pre-header in conjunction with your subject line is also a good way to convey the information about what's going on in your email. Now, sometimes your links might have a problem. The one thing about links is that they can be corrected. And I have some screenshots on the next page. The one thing you also want to keep in mind, if you're going to send out a follow-up, if there's one of the links in your email is broken, you probably only want to mail to the people who have clicked on that link with the follow-up apology email. Once the link's corrected in your email, anyone else who opens it after that will see the correct information or will go to the correct page. So they're not going to need to know that there was an initial error. So you can create a segment of your list based on the people who've clicked just that one link and then send a follow-up email only to them. And then that way you're not going to impact your whole mailing list by sending out a whole nother email to everybody. So in your VR account, this is how you would go about fixing your links once your email's gone out. So you'd go into the reporting section, click on the name of your email. On the dashboard, under the top performing links, click More Link Details, which will bring up this page. It'll show you all of the links in your email. And then whichever one is broken, click Edit URL, and then this window will pop up and you can type in the new URL that you want to send people to, or fix it if there's a space or something in there. What this does is fix the link where it's going to. It won't change what it says in the email. So if there's a typo in the link text, you can't change that because that's already gone out. But the actual place that the link is going to can be edited. So if there is a problem with the link, you can easily fix that and impact a fewer amount of people. Now here's an email that I got not too long ago where there had been a problem with the links in their email. The link I clicked on was fine, and so probably by the time I had gone to click, they had fixed the links, but they resent out an email letting me know. So the subject line said, oops, we goofed, and then it said there were some broken links in the email that they had sent out. It was like 2 days prior. So what they decided to do for anyone's problems that they had was to give a 25% off purchase at a shop that they have. So that's a nice sorry and thank you for putting up with sending out the wrong type of information. But this one was sent out 2 days after the original email, and they're just letting everyone know that the links had been fixed. Now, if the content of your email has some issues, there's a couple things you can do as well. Again, if the wrong image is in your email, images can be refreshed. And again, just like with the links, you might want to only send a follow-up email to the people who've opened the email and not necessarily your entire list. If you need to change an image, you would really need to contact our support team because the way our system handles images is that they're cached. And so we have to refresh the cache. So if the image gets changed, we have to refresh the cache so a new image is in there. But again, if there is an issue with the image, you can correct that and then you can mail just to the people who were impacted by that particular mistake. If it's a typo just in the body of the email and it's not going to impact the business, just address it at a later date, or you may not even need to address it. Again, a spelling error, there will always be the people who will go out of their way to tell you you've made a mistake. But outside of that, most people will know you're human. I mean, we all have issues typing sometimes, so it's something that will happen. Whoops, went too fast there. So I have a couple of examples. This particular company sends emails about wines. They have different wines that are available. And they had sent out an email that had incorrect information about one of the wines. It was very specific information, and they were a little too general in the email. So they sent out a follow-up, and it said, it had a really cute subject line, since they sell wine, a hiccup at happy hour. That was pretty funny. And then they offered free shipping on orders over $75, which when you're buying wine doesn't take long to get to that. So it was nice that they sent out information that was correct about the wines. It probably wasn't totally necessary, but it is good because some of their recipients probably really appreciated it, and some of their recipients probably also knew the error that they had put in the email and were probably being contacted by the people who actually knew what was wrong. So it was nice that they had the free shipping offer as well. And here's another one. Their subject line says, oops, even we mess up. Here's your correct reward status. So they had sent out a newsletter that had account information about rewards, because they have a loyalty program. And initially it had the wrong information when they first sent out the email. This email was sent later. This one was sent a couple hours after the initial one. The first one, I don't actually have really a lot of reward statuses, so I didn't really notice there was a problem. But I'm sure there were some people who let them know, and then they came back and told them what the problem was. But they had a nice subject line, oops, even we mess up, and here's your correct reward status. So right there in the subject line, I knew what had gone wrong in the previous email, and they had the correct information in here. So here's also an example of a way to address something that might have been incorrect in a previous newsletter that you sent out. So this one, they had the wrong designer on 2 patterns in an email. And they didn't send out an whole oops email. They just addressed it in their next newsletter and said what the correct information was in here. So this is kind of like in a magazine, if they have something that's in error, the next issue that comes out, they'll address whatever they had incorrectly stated in the magazine. So this is also something that you can do. You don't have to send out a specific oops email if it's just a little typo in the body of your email. So once you have sent out your follow-up email, you're going to want to measure the impact the mistake had on your business and on your mailing. So you're going to need to track your opens and clicks for both the original email that you sent out and for your follow-up correction email. Watch the conversions if you have something that you're selling. So watch the conversions, see how they're working, especially in the follow-up email. Make sure people are still purchasing. Check the unsubscribe rate, especially in the follow-up email. That one will probably be a little higher. Like I said, if you send an email right away, you can catch people before they've looked at it, but some people will be like, why are they mailing me twice? I'm unsubscribing. And that is a risk that you take, that some people might unsubscribe if they think you're sending too many emails. Once you have both of your emails sent out, you can start to compare them. And in our system, you can go into the reporting section and compare whatever emails you like. So if you click on the names of the 2 emails in the compare section, our system will show you the reporting statistics for just those 2 emails. So you can see the open rates for your original email and your follow-up email. You can see the click-through, the bounces, and the unsubscribes. So you'll be able to compare them and see what sort of impact this had. And of course, you always want to learn from your mistake. And you know, sometimes a mistake isn't necessarily a bad thing. By sending out an apology email, people will say, oh yeah, they're totally human just like me, and you might actually see your sales go up. So it may not necessarily be a bad thing if you handle it in a professional way. And then one thing to try to avoid in the future having an oops moment, you need to make sure you proofread your emails. And I would also suggest that you have someone else proofread them as well, because when you spend a lot of time with your email, you start getting used to looking at certain things, and your brain may not be recognizing that there's something wrong because you're just so into creating the email. So have someone who hasn't been looking at it for a while take a look and go through and proofread it. Here at VR, we actually have a QA process for our newsletters to try to avoid having things go out that are grammatically incorrect or there's spelling errors. And even so, we still miss it. Like I said, we sent out an email with vertical response misspelled. Although I do have to say, in my defense, I always spell it without one of the S's in the end whenever I type it out. So it looked fine to me, but that wasn't how it's spelled. When you're sending an email through our system, you are required to send a test to yourself. And so you definitely want to actually test the email. We don't make you test it. You have to send a test. We don't actually make you look at it, but you really should. You should look at the email, make sure your images are rendering, make sure all your links are going where they're supposed to be going, because in those test emails, those links are live until you actually send the email. So they should be going where you think that they should be going. And if it's not working the way it's supposed to, you need to go in and correct that before you send your emails. Again, bring someone else in with to help you with the proofing. Just have another set of eyes on your email. Use autocorrect. Use auto spell check, whatever you want to use. One of the things that I do when I'm proofing some of our newsletters is I will copy the text from the email and I'll put it in Word. And Word will give you grammatical suggestions as well as spelling suggestions if something isn't right. I mean, it can't tell you if you're using the wrong version of a word, so, you know, two, or two. As long as it's spelled right, it doesn't necessarily know it's the wrong two. But it can help you with some grammar errors and some spelling. So that's one of the things that I do just to make sure I'm not missing something. There's also programs out there that are available to help you with grammar. So if you just do a search, I did a search yesterday and there are actually quite a few available. They're paid services, but you can actually have someone help you with that. And then this blog, Grammar Girl, this is the URL, grammar.quickanddirtytips.com. She has lots of great suggestions and information about grammar and spelling and things like that. And she just had a blog post the other day called 10 Tips to Banish Typos. So that would be very helpful, and it's a lot of information that can help you when you're doing your proofing. So, you know, one of the things that you could do is actually read your email out loud. It might annoy your coworkers a little, but when you read it out loud, you can actually hear if it's making any sense or not. And that might help you catch grammar or even spelling errors sometimes. Or the other thing that you might want to try, and this isn't very environmentally friendly, but printing out the email and then physically being able to go through it can also help catch errors like that as well.